What is a heavy technique within an even front structure? This is an often used read stunt that the defensive end to the nose or the weak side of the defensive line, which has the open B gap, is going to read the tackle's block. If the tackle blocks out on him, he's going to rip inside into the B gap. If the tackle down blocks, he will run the heel line, take the dive if it is zone read, or spill anything coming to his way. So we are going to analyze what a heavy technique is, and we're going to look at a playbook diagram, explain odd and even spacing, and then get into a little bit of film so that we have a better understanding of how this basic function within an even front works. First, we want to understand what odd and even spacing is. All odd spacing means is that we are going to close these B gaps. So modern offense wants to work through that B gap. That's usually where the conflict is. What we're doing in a tight front or in an odd front, even if these guys were in 505, which you see a heavy technique in as well, we are going to try and close these B gaps no matter what post snap. In an odd front like this tight front, we just go ahead and put people in that. So how do we close the B gap in an even front? So here's the B gap bubble. That is what defines even spacing. We can put a linebacker in there, but what a lot of teams do is they will make it a heavy technique and they will have this defensive end be responsible for that B gap. We typically see a heavy technique in a G front. Let's analyze what this means. So we have a nose who's going to be in a 2-eye. He's going to read the center. If the center blocks away, he's going to close the A. That's going to leave a lot of space on this side. We also have an open B gap that we want to close. How are we going to do that? So in most cases, if we get this, we are going to get some sort of slice action and we are going to get some sort of zone action away. Even if we get some sort of a counter scheme, we're still going to get a down block, and that's going to let our defensive end close that B gap. Now, if for whatever reason we get a base block and the tackle bases out, the defensive end will step vertically and then he will rip inside, canceling out that B gap. So either way, he is going to cancel out that B gap. If it's a down, he's going to run the heel line. If this were zone read, he would end up taking the dive and your linebacker would end up taking the quarterback. If it's some sort of a counter or anything like that, he would then run the heel line and spill that, again, keeping that linebacker clean. And that's really what the functionality is that you're trying to keep this linebacker as clean as possible. Now, let's break this down in some film. In this first clip, we're going to watch the Bears' Montez Sweat run a heavy technique. He's here on our left side of the screen. Notice how he's going to take a vertical step. Now, he takes kind of a hop step. He wants to get vertical. He's looking at the offensive tackle's departure angle. So if he shows numbers, we're going to rip inside. And this is exactly what he does. He rips right inside, gives that wrong arm, rips inside. The key here is 53 is now going to what we call scrape exchange. So he is in the B gap. Once he sees the defensive end cross face, he's going to snap down to the line of scrimmage and he will then set an edge for the back. So this is a really good example of a heavy technique in live action. We get a base block by the tackle. The defensive end gets a vertical step, reads it, sees it, rips underneath, closes the B gap. 53 can now snap down to the line of scrimmage. Even though he gets knocked off by this guard, he's able to set the edge, knock that running back, and right to the Mike linebacker who's able to scrape all the way across. So again, we get a vertical step, rip through, snap exchange, and then a tackle right at the line of scrimmage. In this clip, we're going to watch Myles Garrett. He is going to be running a heavy technique as well. Notice that we have our G front. Here's the open B gap bubble, which means he's going to have to close it off of the tackle's block. Here we see a zone coming to his way. He takes, again, a vertical step. Once he sees it, you can watch that right arm is going to chop through, close the B gap. Notice how, again, 58, he sees this. He knows that his defensive end is going to close the B gap. He snaps down to the line of scrimmage and is able to set the edge. These are two really good examples and really have how simple this functionality works. So again, we get a vertical step, rip through with the wrong arm, close the B gap. Linebacker behind him is going to snap down to the line of scrimmage and set the edge or take the running back off of the edge. This is two really nice examples of a heavy technique in live action from an even front. Whether in an even front or an odd front, you are still going to need to close those B gaps if you have a 5 technique or a technique that is outside of the tackle with an open B gap bubble. The easiest way for defenses to do this is to run a heavy technique. So again, if I have the tackle flash his hands or flash his numbers, I'm going to wrong arm, rip inside, close the B gap. Now, the linebacker is going to keep his foot in his gap, but then once he sees me cross face, he's going to snap down in what we call a scrape exchange. The key to this is really that mechanics of the defensive end and the linebacker trusting each other that they're going to do their job. Now, if we get a pass set and we get a high hit and we get that kickback, that defensive end can just stay on his path and keep that pass rush. So this is a great way to utilize the defensive end and the tackle's block. That's why it's called a read stunt against the offense to close that B gap. Now, one thing that offenses like to do if they know you're going to run a heavy technique is what I call an arc. And so the tackle will flash his hands, arc across, and then he will try and then wall that linebacker in. So if you use the heavy technique, understand that scrape exchange element. You got to make sure that linebacker knows that if that tackle arcs, I got to make sure to hit that thing thick, and then I got to fit off the defensive end. Also, with that defensive end, if I feel that thing, then I feel like it's a trap, right? So if I don't get blocked at all, that tackle just completely backslaps me or bypasses me. I got to understand, hey, I need to make sure that I am now going to hold my line and not just get vertical so that that running back can then crease me and then, or the quarterback can pull it and then keep it right there behind that tackle. So hopefully this is a better understanding of how this functionality works within an even front in a popular read stunt called the heavy technique.